The cold light of dawn broke over the Atlantic horizon, casting pale glints off the metal husk that floated silently in international waters. Aboard the reconnaissance vessel Athena, Captain Alira Voss studied the object through high-powered lenses, her jaw clenched tight beneath the collar of her coat. It hadn't been there the night before. No sonar ping, no satellite trace, nothing. Yet here it was, an impossible silhouette, sleek, matte, triangular, hovering inches above the ocean surface. They had been the first to respond to the anonymous tip. Voss didn't believe in coincidences. The coordinates had come encrypted, pulsing on her secure line, just past midnight. Classified protocol dictated she report it, but her instincts, a fusion of gut and battlefield, said otherwise. They'd move within the hour. Beside her, Dr. Aidan Rourke adjusted his glasses, his breath fogging the glass as he leaned forward to examine the vessel. Rourke had made his name in experimental materials engineering, but lately he'd been chasing something more esoteric. Anomalous tech, relics whispered about in the shadows of science. He stared now not with surprise, but recognition. "I've seen this design before," he said quietly. Voss turned to him. "How?" He hesitated, then gestured vaguely at the object. Not this exact structure, but pieces, diagrams, a propulsion signature in a lab I was once told to forget. Voss narrowed her eyes. "You're not on this ship because of your academic reputation, Doctor. I know." The wind picked up and a low hum pulsed in the vessel, so faint it was felt more than heard. The crew grew still. Some backed away instinctively. The air changed, subtly, like pressure folding in on itself. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the sound faded. They launched the drone at sunrise. The drone fed back high-definition images. No visible propulsion system. No seams. No ports or windows. Just a single indentation at its base. A hexagonal chamber ringed with gold filaments, each humming with a faint blue glow. "It's alive," whispered one of the techs. Voss remained silent, staring at the object. Every part of her screamed containment, protocol, chain of command. But beneath that, another feeling stirred, older than training. Awe. Back in the ship's operations bay, she reviewed the vessel's metadata again. The tip's origin had bounced through too many proxies to trace, but one detail hadn't gone unnoticed. The vessel's unique identifier, a code etched faintly beneath the surface, in a language that looked human, earthborn, but in a syntax that defied understanding. That wasn't what disturbed her. It was the date. April 7th, 1987. "Impossible," she muttered. The Athena wasn't alone for long. By mid-morning, 3 more ships had joined them. 1 Russian, 1 Chinese, an unmarked black hole cruiser with no visible crew. Satellites that had shown nothing today before now logged the vessel in full spectral clarity. Something had changed. Either it had reappeared or allowed itself to be seen. Inside the object, a single doorway had appeared overnight. No moving parts. No opening mechanism. Just a space where there had been none before. Voss stood at its threshold with Rourke, both suited in modified hazmat armor. A team of 4 followed behind them, tethered by static ropes and monitored through helmet cams. The interior was larger than physics allowed. Voss knew at the moment they passed through the entry. What should have been a chamber barely 10 feet wide stretched into a cathedral of shadow and gold. Arcing walls hummed softly, lit by faint pulses beneath their surface, like a heartbeat, patient and ancient. "No echo," Rourke murmured, snapping his fingers. The walls absorbed sound. Voss didn't answer. She moved forward, past the entry into a broader chamber, circular, with a raised pedestal at its center. On it floated a sphere, hovering in midair without support, spinning slowly. It wasn't metallic. It wasn't glass. It simply was. It radiated calm and terrible potential. A small screen embedded in her wrist pad flickered violently, then died. All instruments followed. "We're being scrambled," one of the techs said over comms. "No, we're being watched," Rourke replied, almost reverently. He stepped forward, raising his hand to the sphere. Voss's instinct kicked in. She almost stopped him, but something in the air held her still. His fingers grazed the surface. and the world broke open. Images flooded their minds, not through sight but thought. Bursts of color, shapes, a geometry that couldn't exist, a voice without sound, not speaking to them, but through them. Then silence. The sphere dropped. Light vanished. The chamber dimmed. Voss staggered back, breathing hard. Around her, the others groaned, clutching their heads. No injury, no blood, but something was different. They left the object in silence. The Athena went dark that night. No radio signal, no engine response. A blackout, yet the ship still floated, still alive in the water. The next morning, Voss found a message scratched into her bunk steel frame. IT belongs to Earth. It has been to the end and returned. By the time they reconnected with the outside world, the object had vanished, not drifted, not submerged, gone. Satellites showed nothing. No ship had seen it leave. And yet, in the following days, signs began to emerge. A spike in the Earth's magnetic field, atmospheric irregularities, reports of dreams, shared dreams, describing lights, oceans folding inside themselves, and a golden sphere. Every nation that had seen the vessel denied its existence, but the Athena's crew knew the truth. So did Rourke. He had gone silent, disappearing within days of returning to land. Voss received a single encrypted note from him. It wasn't lost. It was watching, and now it remembers us. She stared out over the ocean from her outpost 2 weeks later, the sea calm, blue, indifferent, but somewhere beneath it or above it or beyond it, the vessel remained, waiting, and whatever had brought it back wasn't finished. The laboratory buried beneath Greenland's southern ice shelf was not on any official map. Its existence was known only to a scattering of world leaders, and its funding flowed through a labyrinth of shell corporations and misappropriated defense budgets. Inside its walls, the recovered components of the vessel, what few had been salvaged before it vanished, rested under high-density magnetic fields and round-the-clock surveillance. They called it Project Remex, though no one agreed on what the acronym stood for anymore. Dr. Aidan Rourke stood alone in Observation Chamber 3, eyes fixed on the containment field as the sphere hovered silently within. Smaller now, only the size of grapefruit, but still emanating that same low, pulsing frequency that defied measurement. He hadn't spoken aloud in days, not since the dreams had returned. He barely slept. When he did, he found himself inside the vessel again, not a memory, but a living vision, shifting with each dream like a language evolving. Sometimes he heard voices. Sometimes he understood them. Behind him, the door slid open with a muted hiss. Elira Voss entered, her presence immediate, tangible, as if she still carried the pressure of the ocean around her shoulders. "You're supposed to be in Oslo," he said, without turning. "I left after the Security Council session, turned into a shouting match. One side wants to destroy this thing. The other wants to turn it into a weapon system." He glanced at her. "And you? I want to know what it is." He nodded, returning his gaze to the sphere. "It's not a what, it's a when." Voss narrowed her eyes. "Explain." Rourke tapped the glass gently. "The materials it's composed of aren't in any known database. Not just rare, non-existent in current geologic epochs. Trace elements we haven't cataloged since pre-solar formation. And this," he gestured toward the levitating object, "doesn't obey our laws. Its mass fluctuates. It distorts local gravity. It exists in overlapping quantum states. That's not a machine. That's a statement. You're saying it's a message? I'm saying it's a proof. Something far beyond us left this here not to be found, but to be remembered. And I think it was human." She didn't speak for a long time. The only sound was the soft hum of containment and the occasional crackle from the cooling vents. "Then where did it go?" she asked finally. "It didn't leave," he said. "It transitioned." Voss frowned. "To where?" Rourke tilted his head. "That's the wrong question." She stepped closer to the glass, her reflection merging with his. For a moment, they both appeared ghost-like, mirrored fragments watching something neither of them could name. "I decrypted more of the inscription," he added, voice low. "From the underside of the vessel. It wasn't just a date. It was coordinates. Temporal ones. Time! He nodded. It's not a ship. It's a vessel of memory. Of recursion. It doesn't travel through space. It repositions reality. Voss pressed a palm to the glass. The sphere pulsed once brighter. She recoiled slightly. You triggered it, Rourke said. You were inside longer than anyone else. You touched the core. It felt like it was touching me. They fell silent again, memories of the entry chamber returning with chilling clarity. The impossible dimensions. The images. The voice. Have you told anyone else? She asked. I can't, Rourke replied. It's already listening. As if in response, the sphere rotated slowly in midair, its surface refracting impossible colors, shades that didn't exist in the visible spectrum, but which their minds somehow perceived. Emotion swelled behind their eyes. Lost discovery, rage, longing. Not theirs. The lights flickered. Security alarms warbled faintly, then cut to static. EMP. Voss asked, backing toward the panel. No, Rourke said, watching the sphere with mounting dread. It's trying to communicate. The sphere dropped. Not fell, descended with intent. It hovered inches above the floor and rolled toward the containment barrier. The field sparked violently. Lights blew out. Monitors died. Then the barrier dropped. In the darkness, Voss reached for her sidearm instinctively, but Rourke raised a hand. No, he said. Don't. It's inviting us. To what? She asked, voice tight. To understand. The sphere pulsed again. Voss took a cautious step forward. Rourke followed, the two of them now illuminated by nothing but the glow of the object. Time bent subtly around it. A second passed for Voss, while Rourke experienced a full minute. Each heartbeat an echo stretched across dimensions. It rose again, not as a threat, but like a question. Voss knelt beside it, and the world folded inward. She saw a city built on light, suspended in oceans of air, machines that were not machines but extensions of thought, people who wore no faces but moved with purpose, beings caught halfway between flesh and code. She saw humanity's distant descendants, spiraling forward and backward in time, their history both an origin and an ending, a loop, a seed, and at the center of it all, the vessel, a library, a test, a promise, then nothing. Voss gasped as the light snapped back on. She was on her knees. Rourke was beside her, pale and shaking. Around them, the lab systems rebooted, unaware of what had passed in those lost seconds or hours. The sphere was gone. In its place, a small metallic sliver hovered midair. A key, or perhaps a map. Voss reached out, and it settled into her palm like it had always belonged there. They didn't speak for a long time. The silence between them was heavy, not with fear, but realization. It chose us, Rourke said finally. No, she replied. It remembered us. Outside, the ice began to crack, and somewhere beneath, ancient circuitry blinked awake for the first time in millennia. The descent into the rift was unauthorized. Voss had reviewed the satellite feeds 5 times. The ice shell hadn't cracked naturally. It had parted. Smooth, surgical, a perfect hexagon cut into one of the oldest formations on Earth. No seismic activity. No melt. Just gone, as if a lid had been lifted. Now, at 2,000 feet beneath the frozen crust, her submersible vibrated with the pressure of silence. There were no currents, no fauna, only cold, dark water, and the shimmering glow of something impossibly ancient at the chasm's base. Above her, a second submersible held Rourke and a data team. They communicated only through tight beam quantum links now, radio signals bent and lost this deep. Voss stared at the construct before her, breath steady despite the rising tension. It resembled a cathedral made of light and stone, geometric, alive. Columns pulsed faintly. Platforms floated in spirals. The architecture looked human, but not built by human hands. Something remembered what it meant to be human, and had mimicked it with eerie reverence. This isn't ruins, she said into the link. It's operational. Rourke's voice returned, rough with awe. It's responding to your signal. She looked at her hand. The sliver. The key, glowed faintly through her glove. It had bonded to her palm the moment she accepted it in the lab. Medical scans had failed to remove it. Now, it pulsed in rhythm with the structure ahead. The submersible touched down. She emerged alone. The water here was breathable. That wasn't theoretical. Sensors confirmed the oxygenation. The chamber had been built to receive them. Lights followed her steps. The floor shimmered with layered crystal, each step playing faint tones beneath her boots. This was not exploration. This was invitation. And yet, the sense of trespass pressed against her mind like a hell breath. At the heart of the structure stood a pillar, 6 feet high, surrounded by rings of glass-like petals. Embedded within it was a globe, not unlike the sphere they'd encountered before, but fractured. Segments rotated apart like puzzle pieces in stasis. Inside it, motion, light, a storm of memory caged within. She approached. The key in her hand dissolved on contact with the pedestal, threads of metal weaving into the surface like veins. The storm within the globe intensified. Voss heard a voice, not external. "Hello again." She froze. "You were not meant to find us so soon." "What are you?" she whispered. "What you may become. If you endure." Rourke's voice snapped through the comm, crackling with interference. "We're seeing movement. Everything's pulsing. Are you Voss? Are you inside the core?" She didn't answer. The storm shifted. The light expanded outward, engulfing her mind. She stood in a city again, but this time she was someone, not a visitor. She was herself, yet centuries removed. Uniform different. Skin older. She walked among tall towers humming with sentience. Skies ribboned with craft moving, without engines. No hunger, no war, but not peace either. Purpose, a single collective pursuit, to warn the past, to repair the cycle, then collapse. She fell to her knees, breath ragged. The vision faded. "It's a memory archive," she gasped. "They encoded human consciousness, projected forward, and looped it back. They uploaded themselves?" Rourke asked, "A civilization of ghosts?" "No," she said, rising. "A civilization of caretakers." There was a sudden shift in the air, more mental than physical. A second presence entered the space. Voss turned, weapon instinctively drawn. From the far end of the chamber, a figure emerged. Humanoid, armored, golden. It looked like a knight born of circuitry and myth. The same design as the statue recovered months ago in the Sahara. One that had never been identified, but had vanished from storage without trace. The figure moved slowly, deliberately, head inclined slightly as if recognizing her. "What is it?" Rourke asked. Voss didn't answer. The figure stopped a few feet away. Its voice was like a chorus of harmonics. "You are early." "I didn't choose this," she said, defiant. "No, but you were chosen. You carry the imprint, the seed." The globe behind her fractured, open fully. Energy flowed into the chamber. Waves of information, flickering glyphs across the walls, forming diagrams, schematics, timelines. She watched as events cascaded across invisible pathways. The fall of cities, the rise of silent satellites, the unrecorded wars of memory. And one phrase repeated again and again in every language she recognized, and many she didn't. "The remembrance fails." "What does it mean?" she asked. "This cycle ends. All others have." "Cycle of what?" The knight-like figure stepped forward. From its chest, a small disk ejected, hovering toward her. She caught it midair, instinctively. Images flared to life across the room. Earth spinning, then Earth blackened. Not destroyed, erased. Erased by something that fed on memory itself. A parasite of time. A concept entity. It returns when we forget. You must remember. I don't understand. You will. The disk folded into itself and vanished. Rourke's voice broke through again, urgent. "Elira, we're getting seismic shifts. Something's rising from the trench. It's huge. Bigger than anything we've mapped. You need to move." She backed away slowly, heart pounding. "What's coming?" she asked the figure. "The echo." She turned and ran. As she reached the exit, a tremor shook the entire chamber. From the depth beyond the construct, massive shadows uncoiled, limbs of thought and structure, impossible to fully perceive. The water boiled not from heat, but from displacement. Something vast and ancient was stirring. Back in the submersible, she sealed the hatch as the lights outside flickered violently. The structure behind her cracked, not from collapse, but release. Rourke's sub locked in beside hers, engines roaring. "Take us up. Now!" The pilots didn't argue. As they rose through the rift, the chamber below folded closed again, the hexagon sealing itself as if nothing had ever been there. The ocean calmed. Voss sat in silence, soaked and shaking. The disk was gone, but its knowledge burned into her vision. She saw symbols when she blinked. She remembered events that had not yet happened. And somewhere in the darkness beneath them, the echo waited, not as an enemy, but as a reckoning of forgotten truths. The cycle had begun again, and this time they were expected. The world was no longer silent. In the days following their emergence from the rift, instruments around the globe began detecting inexplicable anomalies. Clocks falling out of sync in localized clusters, gravity readings fluctuating in pulses, and entire regions experiencing shared dreams with identical content. The international community struggled to contain the narrative, but the truth rippled too fast. Leaked footage from the Greenland breach, unexplainable tremors at ley line intersections, and the sudden reappearance of ancient artifacts long thought lost. The world's myths were waking up, and people felt it in their bones. Voss hadn't spoken publicly. The official line was environmental research gone awry, seismic instability blamed for temporary disappearances. But in truth, she was no longer interested in placating bureaucrats. Her focus was singular now, on the disk implanted within her. It hadn't been visible since it entered her palm, but its effects grew clearer each day. She could see temporal patterns in weather, predict micro-reactions in conversations, sense outcomes before choices were even made. And then came the voice. At first it whispered in her dreams, fragmented warnings in languages she had never learned. Then it emerged in daylight, layered into electronic frequencies, shadows and radio static. The echo was not just a threat. It was already here, integrated into their perception of causality. It didn't arrive like an army. It unfolded like doubt. She met Rourke in an underground bunker outside Geneva. He looked older, weeks of no sleep, eyes ringed with shadows, hands trembling subtly. But he was sharper than ever. "I've isolated a pattern," he said, gesturing toward the holographic lattice suspended in the air. The glyphs you remembered. They match carvings on 6 separate megaliths across Earth, sites not culturally linked. And yet, each depict a similar event, an object descending from the sky, awakening memory, followed by a purge. Purge. He nodded grimly. A collapse. Each time the knowledge grew too great. When memory reached critical density, it triggered a reset. Civilization didn't fall. It was cleansed, not by war, but by the echo. It consumes the past to stop us from changing the future. Voss studied the lattice. The nodes shimmered like constellations. Then the remembrance isn't just a warning. It's a weapon. Or a firewall, Rourke offered. A last defense. Every time they tried to stop the echo, they had to hide the tools of memory in the most unlikely place. The human mind. Voss opened her hand. The pattern from the disk flickered across her skin in faint lines. "And now we carry it." Before he could answer, the alarm screamed. Monitors surged with interference. Outside the bunker, the sky turned the color of bruised copper. Every compass needle twisted erratically. A tremor passed through the earth, not tectonic, but rhythmic. They ran to the surface. Above the city, the clouds split, not naturally, but like fabric torn from another dimension. From the breach emerged a shape vast and amorphous, barely visible against the distortion it carried. Buildings flickered in and out of existence around its shadow. Memories fractured mid-thought. People collapsed in the streets, not from pain, but from forgetting who they were. Rourke stared, horror-struck. "It's manifesting." Voss didn't flinch. "It's consuming identity, rewriting causal anchors." "How do we fight something that isn't matter?" "We don't," she said. "We remember louder than it forgets." She pressed a hand to her temple. The disk activated. Around her, Time slowed, not halted, but clarified. Events ceased to blur. The city stabilized. She could see pathways of choice branching from her feet, luminous trails showing what could be. The echo flickered, unsure. And then something stranger happened. People began to resist. A boy reached for his mother and remembered her name. A woman screamed a poem she had learned as a child. A group of strangers locked hands and shouted their shared history. With each act of memory, the echo lost form. Rourke stared. Is it vulnerable? Voss nodded, her voice clear. It can erase what we choose to remember. She stepped forward, eyes burning with purpose. In the distance, other anomalies opened, brief windows into parallel outcomes. In one, Earth was dark and silent. In another, cities floated in oceans of cloud. Every version of humanity struggling, rising, falling. But only this one had her. She reached into the disk's pattern and amplified it, not just through her mind, but through the network. The satellites above, the fiber optics beneath, even the low-band radio towers, all pulsed with one signal. We remember. The echo reeled, screaming not with sound, but with history denied. The sky tore again, this time inward, and the entity collapsed upon itself, folding into a memory that could no longer feed it. The rupture sealed. Reality calmed. But not all was restored. Thousands remained lost in mind, if not in body. Cities bore scars not of flame, but of amnesia. Archives had been stripped. Entire chapters of art, music, and knowledge vanished. The echo had fed well before it starved. Voss sat on the steps of a ruined cathedral that night, staring at the stars. Rourke joined her, wrapping a coat around his shoulders. It's quiet. It won't last, she said. No, but we bought time. She looked at him. Did we win? He thought for a long moment. We didn't lose. She smiled faintly. Maybe that's enough. From her palm, the disk reappeared. Its glow dim, but steady. She didn't ask why. She understood now. It wasn't over. The remembrance was never a single battle. It was a cycle, and she was its keeper. Behind them, the world began to write again, not in books or data, but in memory. Carved not into stone, but into choice, into song, into story. Because some truths, once remembered, cannot be erased.